Barnaby Joyce and what he had to say. And look, I think that there is a point that's in all of this. However, I'm sure that there'll be two ladies about to take one hell of a run up to kick him fair between the legs here. Once again, here he is speaking to Peter Stefanovic and Laura Jays this morning here on Sky News.
I'm on a very, very good salary, incredibly good salary. And probably by my own circumstances, it's sped pretty thin. And Peter, what I'm trying to do, if anything, is just emphasise that if for me it's spread thin on an incredibly good salary, how is it going for other people? It must be incredibly tough. You know, I've got the capacity to always make ends meet, and I do that. But Peter, I for the life of me can't work out how someone can survive on $280 a week.
What's he talking about? Of course, he's talking about Newstart, or as normal people would call it, the dole, and whether the dole should be increasing or not. Janine, I can hear the huff and puff from all the way up the Hume Highway, so you get the first crack at this.
Yeah, I didn't like you saying...
Was he making a point somewhere?
I didn't like you saying the two ladies. Just because Pauline and I might be in agreement about Barnaby making yet another git of himself today doesn't mean it's a gender thing. It just means that we're both more rational on this one. Can I just say, I know Barnaby Joyce isn't an idiot, but God, he does a good impersonation of one quite often. That's the problem. I mean, anybody would think I know the point he was trying to say, and it might be fine that he's trying to draw attention to a subject that he never really worried that much about before, but he's had this conversion, fell off his horse on the way to wherever he was going. But what gets me about this Newstart, as I said earlier, Paul, it's not just young people on it. There's a lot of older women on it who've had their husbands run off with women, do something, and they're left on their own. So I just think there's a lot more to this story, and he could have... Look, it's all about Barnaby, and I don't think he's helped the case at all. Once again, it's all about Barnaby. I could go on for a half an hour, but Pauline put it very succinctly today, so I let Pauline take the floor on this one.
Unity ticket, not a gender ticket, a common sense ticket, apparently.
Oh, look, telling you, Skinter, as I said this morning, you know, give me the tissues. Where are the tissues? I've got Paul Barnaby and all the rest of it. I think what he's feeling sorry about, and I did the figures because he separated from his first wife and they've got one child. Now, if he doesn't see the child and he has no involvement in having the child...
3 children he's got, Pauline, 3.
Yeah, I know, but one's still under 18, all right? So... Yep. Child support on his wage, he'd be looking at about $26,000 to $28,000 a year in child support he'll be paying. That's why he feels skint. Well,
that's a whole family court thing that we should talk about one day.
Yes, we will. So probably that's why he's feeling skint with it, because he's got to hand over that in child support.
But the point, of course, he's trying to make is, in his defence, because I can assure you something's being thrown at a television somewhere in this building now, is that if you're somebody who is on the very small amount of money that you get from the dole, clearly it's going to be very hard to make ends meet. He's saying, as a bloke who's earning plenty, he's going to make it hard to make ends meet as his life circumstances change. Now, Richo, I do love how there are plenty of Labor politicians here who are tweeting and saying that, you know, we must do something about Newstart. If only there was an election a few months ago and their policy was to increase it. Alas, their policy was to have an inquiry into it. Do you quite believe the conversion the Labor Party has had to, we must increase Newstart? When?
You know,
not until we're in government. Maybe.
Mate, in the entire parliament, only Jackie Lambie has her hands clean on this issue. The only parliamentarian who's been up there and who's been on the dole. Yep. And has, I mean, I've made a brilliant speech once about her experiences. I must say it was a very moving performance. But only she understands it, really. The rest of us, we're spectators. We have never been on the playing field on this one. And therefore, we don't really know how hard it is. And I think we sometimes say, oh, gee, we're giving them 10 grand, that's plenty. Well, it obviously isn't. And
sorry, you're wrong, Richard. You're absolutely wrong, because you have no idea how tough I did it when I was 22 with 2 children. One was six months old at that time, and to actually not have enough money to actually pay the rent and plus put food on the table for myself and 2 kids. No support from the husbands whatsoever. And I had a part-time job just a few hours a week to try and cover the bills. So I know what it's like to be doing it bloody tough out there. But I don't feel sorry for myself. And Newstart is a helping hand. It should not be a way of life, and it cannot possibly be a way of life of what we're paying them. But the whole fact is that, you know, when Barnaby says out there that he's skint and, you know, it's hard to make ends meet, it is bloody hard for people to make ends meet, to pay that rent and to feed themselves. So there does need to be an increase in it, but don't take it away from us, because you possibly don't know how tough possibly some of us parliamentarians have had it in our life, and we do understand how people are doing it tough out there. And I will never forget that, my past, and that's why I will stand up and fight for these issues, what I think is right, but not as a way of life for people. It is a helping hand, but you have to get up off your backside and start taking responsibility for yourself and your own actions, and it's not the taxpayer's responsibility.
What about, Richo, the overall idea about whether or not the dole should be increased? I am sympathetic to the concept of an increase somewhere, but I think that should cut out after 6 months. I think that it can't be something that's line ball with the minimum wage, because then, of course, if there's the choice of do I work for 40 hours for the minimum wage or do I look for work for 40 hours for a minimum wage, I think we all know which people are going to choose.
I think that's right. I worry about making it say cushy, but that having been said, I can't imagine what Pauline went through. I haven't been through anything like that myself. I've had, in that sense, a lucky, privileged lifestyle, and so I've never really experienced hardship other than trying to pay for my first mortgage when I bought my first house, and we didn't have enough of the milk money, but that was still living in a nice house and all the rest of it. This is a foreign area for a lot of people who make the decisions. You have a look at around that parliament. How many of them have ever been in Pauline or Jackie Lambie's position? I'd suggest to you very, very few, if any, others.
So, Janine and Rowan, should we be increasing the dole? Because the truth is that anyone who says yes, that's fine, but you've got to work out how the hell are you going to pay for it? How long? How much? What percentage? How do you link it? Do you link it to the minimum wage? If you do end up linking it to the minimum wage, well, the minimum wage is always going to ever so slightly increase. The cost to the bottom line through the roof. Rowan?
Yeah, well, Paul, I actually think we're looking at this whole debate through the wrong end of the telescope. By all means, increase Newstart. That's fine. It sounds like a horrific way to try and live on Newstart. But the point of Newstart is to get people into another job, into a new job. That's the key issue that's being ignored in this. Only last week we had Christian Porter, a Liberal, a so-called centre-right member of the government, saying that they were going to increase the criminalisation of wage theft, which was this big story that came out of last week, because one of the master chefs had been underpaying his staff, and you know, we hear that the Rock Pool or people like that have had problems paying their staff. 2 young guys who set up a restaurant only 6 months ago had to pack it in because they couldn't pay their staff. We're looking at it at the wrong end. We're making it so difficult in this country to employ people. We should be making it easier for people to employ people. For someone who's set up a cafe to say, look, I can't pay you this amount, but I can pay you this. You know, I'll help you, you'll learn this. That's where we're missing out. That's what a genuine enterprise nation or culture does. It allows you to take people on at whatever salary, give them a crack, give them a go at it. But we put the bar so high that there are people who cannot, who are going out of business because they can't afford to pay the ridiculous wages that are mandated, and we're going to make it harder by criminalising them. And yet there are people desperate to get off Newstart because it's so miserable, but the jobs aren't there because there's this massive gap. That's where we need to be looking at, getting rid of these ridiculous laws that make it so difficult to employ people in this country.
Can I just pick up on that? The hospitality industry, a lot of cafes are going bust because there are too many of them, and there are too many people who think they can run a small business and they can't do it without paying proper wages. They just can't do it anyway. So let's not blame everybody whose business goes bust. I think it's fantastic. I did a small business show for 10 years when wages were less, and I can tell you there are just too many people who aren't prepared, who are going about it wrongly, and we can't blame everything on it.
Our wages are the highest in the world,
That's
Janine.
a different issue. It doesn't mean that all these cafes that close because hipsters there.
That's why
there's a lot of people on
Newstart.
Can I just make the point? I've seen the US. I've lived in the US. I don't want to be in a situation where the dole cuts out and we have people living in car parks. I don't want to live in that kind of country where
selfishness.
Where people are in crime and doing it.
Hang on, I just want to hear what
you don't want to let people off Newstart.
All I'm hearing is you, Rowan. I want to hear what you're going to say.
You don't know what I'm saying. I don't know everything. My point being, That's the kind of country we choose. There's got to be a happy medium on it. I keep saying my issue is not with young people. I understand the government's argument. I understand Rowan's argument. For young people, you do not want them, as we used to call them, dole bludgers. Why isn't it called the dole anymore? I keep saying there are hundreds of thousands on New Start who are people, including women, over 55. And this isn't about cutting wages. They cannot get jobs. Employers will not hire them. It has nothing to do with what the wage price is. They just don't want older people. They want younger people. They want immigrants. They want whatever. There is a bigger social issue here, and we need to look at it. And I will just say, at a time where we are all lauding John Howard, he believes in a rise in New Start. Not a big one, but at least something.
Now, I think this is an issue that you mentioned a couple of times, Janine, and it's worth us taking a second to talk about. So much of our society is geared to young families, first homeowners, people freshly leaving out of school. There is a huge number of people over the age of 40, definitely 50, who still want to work, who still can't access anything to do with their superannuation or anything else, but they can't get a job. And this, to me, Pauline, is one of those areas where, because the media is generally speaking made up of sort of 20-somethings who only care about the clickbait that plays well on Twitter, there is this entire generation of people who can't get access to the money they've been told by their government they have to put aside for the rest of their life, and they can't get a job to be able to keep adding to their future. What the hell do we do for an unemployed person over 50?
It is awfully hard. When I had my shop, I actually wanted to employ the older person because I thought their work ethic was absolutely fantastic. So I had the older people. Even in my office now, I've got the older mature-aged people in my office.
James is about 60.
He's only one of them. But I have...
He just looks it because you're working so bloody hard.
I think they've got a lot to offer our society. I like the older person. But I come across so many businesses that say, we can't get Australians to work. They don't want to work. And I've got... If anyone wants to do a fencing contract and go out west in Western New South Wales, please contact my office, and I've got a person there who can't get anyone to go and work for them.
There we go.
So anyway, to do...
Let's get that solved, buddy. Anyway, you want to go west? You're good with a hammer?
Yeah, so you be trained in that field and you get a good go at it. Look, it is a big problem. What we haven't done, provided over the period of time, is apprenticeships. So we've lost over a couple of 100,000 apprenticeships.
Because we told everyone you've got to go to uni.
They knew in 1996 that we were going to have not enough nurses. They knew this was coming. This is why they let it run down. So they had a reason to bring in the skilled migrants from overseas to increase the population into Australia. This was, you can't tell me this was not orchestrated with the whole lot. And then you've got the migrants coming into this country. They will work for lower wages under the counter. So then you've got a lot of businesses here. They'll pay them under the counter, the lower wages, just to have a job. So we have over 1 million people that are underemployed in Australia that want jobs. But I tell the Australians out there, get off your backsides and go out and show the work ethic. If you want a job, then walk into a shop and say, listen, mate, I'll give you a couple of days' work to prove how good I am, and if you think I'm pretty good, then put me on. But there's got to be give and take out there. And, of course, you can't sack anyone who's bloody useless. It's hard to get rid of them. All these agreements, it's so much red tape. And that's why they don't want to risk putting these people on, because you get sued and you can't sack them.
That sound you can hear is a hallelujah in the suburbs around Australia. That's where you can hear some common sense on the telly.